Hi everyone, I am Brooke and today Jennifer, Amy, and I will be discussing if C-section should be elective. Jennifer will be arguing for elective C-sections, focusing on health benefits for women, and Amy will be arguing against elective C-section, focusing on health and psychological risks to mom as well as health risks to the baby. Jennifer, if you would like to start.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke. As she said, I will be discussing the health benefits to mom and women's rights to choose an elective C-section as part of their birth plan. So starting out, a cesarean section is an operation in which incisions are made in the abdomen and uterus during the birth process. According to a medically reviewed article for Very Well Family, in 2015, an estimated 32% of all births in the United States were performed by C-section, and of those, 2.5% were elective by maternal request. The basis of my discussion will be exploring some reasons women may consider when choosing an elective C-section as their birth plan. So some health benefits that I have identified during the research of elective C-sections include lower risk of urinary incontinence and pelvic prolapse. Pelvic prolapse is when one or more of the organs in the pelvis slip down from their normal position and bulge into the vagina. Planned cesarean sections lower the risk of birth injuries such as asphyxia, which is oxygen deprivation, and other injuries such as fractures. Another reason that women may elect for a C-section may depend on prior pregnancies. For example, if a woman had a previous birthing experience that resulted in an emergency C-section, she may wish to choose an elective C-section for her second birth. So this leads us to discuss the benefits and rights of a woman to be in control of her birthing process and the alleviation of any anxiety the woman may feel associated with labor and delivery. It is the mother's right to have a voice in her birth plan. The labor and delivery doctor should consult with the mother and discuss the mother's wishes. The mother may want to have more privacy during the birthing process. Also, the mother can schedule the delivery. This may benefit the family if the father works out of town or if the family lives in a remote area. The mother may also have significant anxiety and fear associated with the pain from labor. And some cultural aspects that I identified during the research involve the women's empowerment movement, also known as the women's suffrage movement, which began in 1920 when women were allowed the right to vote. Women have been fighting for their rights ever since. Electing to have a C-section is considered, in my opinion, one part of that movement. It is a woman's right to decide how to birth their child. According to the U.S. National Library of Medicine, surprisingly enough, the first C-section was performed by a woman between the years 1815 and 1821. James Miranda Stewart Barry performed the first C-section while masked as a man, serving as a physician to the British Army in South Africa. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Jennifer. Amy, if you'd like to discuss your argument. It looks like you're muted still, Amy.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Brooke. Although Jennifer made some really good points, most of us would agree that becoming a new parent, whether it's your first or your fifth, planned or an unplanned pregnancy, can be very stressful and worrisome. We have to consider our finances. We worry about who we will trust to care for our baby. We worry about whether or not we will make appropriate parenting decisions and whether or not we will simply be able to perform the tasks necessary to care for our baby. Ruth Hooft et al. Introduction to Prospect Guidelines for Elective Cesarean Sections states that cesarean sections are associated with moderate to severe pain and can delay recovery as well as the return to daily activities. With a new baby comes sleepless nights, frequent feedings and diaper changes, getting up and down, rocking, bouncing, a lot of movement that can be restricted with the physical limitations from this very evasive surgical procedure. This article also states that the pain associated with cesarean sections can impair bonding between mother and child. Mom might not be able to get up and down and do the moving around that she needs to perform the tasks to care for baby. In some situations, mom may not even be able to lift baby for a period of time after birth. And in most situations would not be able to lift baby with the car seat. This article also points out that the pain can complicate breastfeeding. Mom may not be able to get into the positions necessary for baby to be comfortable enough to latch on to feed. And all of these factors can negatively impact maternal psychological well-being. The article also points out that most post-operative treatments include opioid pain medication. So when we have a new mom going through stressful situations, we also have to consider that this stress and the change in hormones, women are at risk for developing postpartum depression. So we have pain from this very invasive surgical procedure, stress of becoming a new mom and maybe not being able to perform the tasks necessary to care for baby, as well as the physical limitations that come with this surgical procedure, the negatively impacted psychological well-being in the addition of opioid pain medications. It's like creating the perfect storm. There is also a journal article written by Sandal et al. Titled Short-Term and Long-Term Effects of Cesarean on Women and Children. This article states that women who have cesarean sections are at higher risk of complications in subsequent pregnancies and births. I know that Jennifer had pointed out that if a woman has to have an emergency C-section, then they could then elect possibly to have C-sections for their following pregnancies. And this article would state that those women are at higher risk with each subsequent pregnancy, but it states even more that anything 3 or more, there's a great risk for complications to mom and to baby. There's an increased risk for hysterectomies, abnormal placentation, higher risk for bleeding, as well as most planned cesarean sections are done prior to 39 weeks, which leaves baby at risk for respiratory issues as well as low blood sugar. Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Amy. So I feel like very valid points were made on both sides of this argument. And before we go any further, Jennifer, would you like to add anything?
I would actually just, Amy, with you talking about the opioid pandemic or the opioid crisis and how that can be started, a lot of the opioid addiction started from legal prescriptions. And so that's a very valid point to consider.
I agree also. As you, Jennifer, explained, if a woman elects a C-section, she'll have a better say in her birth plan, which supports the women's suffrage movement that began in 1920, that we still see women are fighting today in 2021. With that, she can also reduce the risks that come with vaginal delivery. So elective is obviously a part of that women's suffrage movement and continuing to fight for our rights as women to have a say in our birth plan. And while those were great points, Amy explained that they should not be elective, as the recovery not only introduces opioids to mom, which can become addicting, but potentially the baby if she's breastfeeding, as well as possibly affecting the bonding experience since mom is recovering from an invasive surgery. So really,
Yeah. Sorry, Brooke. Yeah, that's something that that I thought about too while Amy was making her arguments too, is the breastfeeding, because she will be on pain medication afterwards, especially being cut open like that. And so that makes me wonder about, you know, whether or not the baby's getting that pain medication. And that's
Yes.
putting the baby in danger as well.
My article did not, or I did not make note of any complications that it stated regarding, baby being impacted by the opioid medications, but that is a very I would like to hear more about, like, I would be interested in reading more about the negative impacts that might have on baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see, though, where, the anxiety is lessened for mom if she has that sense of control in her labor, being able to, this is how I want to do it, so I don't see the difference in, say if a woman wants to use a birthing pool and have the baby at home, she's able to choose that and maybe have a midwife here, or however she wants to do that. I don't really see the difference in choosing to have an elective C-section. That's part of a birth plan as well, and I see the benefits, and I see the consequences that could come out of it too.
I would agree. I think that maybe to alleviate some of that stress would be the ability to plan and be prepared, have the necessary family members present, knowing more when baby was coming versus maybe waking up in the middle of the night, or if you have other children, being able to have your other kids already cared for, stable in their, where whoever their caretaker is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just gives more control. Or, like I said, if they lived like far out into the country and were 45 minutes away from the hospital, during that time, I mean, nobody knows it's happening until it like happens. And so I feel like if the mom has that, set schedule and set plan, like, hey, we're going to go to the hospital this day, I think that would alleviate a lot for her, especially with new moms too. If it's, a new experience all the way around, it can be very stressful on her and hectic.
Absolutely. So to me, I think that we've made some pretty good points on both sides of this argument. And ultimately, I think we've already agreed that, women should have the right to use all of the educated information that they receive to make a proper choice.
Absolutely. Informed decision. And another thing that I just thought about too is, people choose elective surgeries every day, whether it's like cosmetic surgeries or whatnot, they choose those. So I feel like this kind of falls into that category, someone choosing to have a C-section.
I agree completely. I do think, just like you said, Amy, it comes down to making an educated decision on both sides, knowing what the pros and cons are going to be to a C-section from the beginning. And if you are somebody that has those medical issues, that it's just going to be, that's the way it is, then knowing what's to come after that is super important.
Yeah.
So I think both sides were very, very great and had very valid points. So everybody else, thank you so much for listening to our debate on C-sections, and I hope we have a great discussion this week.
Thank you.
Thank you.